have to say very clearly, Europe is not capable of receiving all the refugees in the world. The system, social systems, political systems in our member states cannot cope with that.
Elsewhere, the UN chief says more than 4 million people have fled the ongoing conflict in Syria. Ban Ki-moon says the large number of Syrian refugees has caused great challenges to many countries, including Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and Iraq. He added that nearly 8 million people inside Syria are in urgent need of humanitarian aid. Syria has been through a bloody conflict since 2011. The Syrian government has been fighting against foreign-backed militants and terrorist groups, including the ISIL.
On the longest of nights, the rain poured down on a group of almost 2,000 people intent on reaching Western Europe. Alighting from a train in the Croatian town of Kakovice, just shy of the Slovenian border, their passage onward seemed endless.
You must hold there. You understand me?
Wissam, a Syrian biomedical student, spoke of his journey so far.
They told us there is homes, there is everything, but the border is closed and it's raining, and we are here in the middle of nowhere.
What do you think will happen?
I don't know what will happen, but they must open the border so they let people pass.
This weekend, Croatia granted over 10,000 desperate people passage. They requested their northern neighbours to allow 5,000 people to pass each day. But Slovenia said it could only take half of that number. The night grew darker, the crowds larger, families waited, little ones took shelter, while the police watched over. For Wissam, the journey seems all too fraught with challenges. He captained the boat from Turkey to Greece.
I drove the boat. It was a responsibility, and yes, it was hard. You know, the life of 30 persons is in your hands.
The situation has changed for the migrants and refugees in recent days. The previous orderly flow now stutters and bottlenecks swell at the border crossings. They face exhaustion, inclement weather, and adversity. Nevertheless, 10 at a time they pass, onward in search of a brighter dawn.
سوريا من قامشلي منطقة قامشلي. سافرت من بلدي بسبب الحروب، انعدام العدالة، انعدام النظم الاجتماعية، القوانين، الحقوق مهضومة، يعني لأسباب كثيرة. الهجرة تأتي لأسباب كثيرة: انعدام الأمن، انعدام الاستقرار، الحروب، الإرهاب من طرف، الحكومات الظالمة الدكتاتورية من طرف. يعني ضحيتنا بالأول وبالأخير الشعب والأطفال هم الضحية لكل صراعات بالمنطقة. والسبب هو عدم وجود الاستقرار والأمان.
Merkel must go, they chant. The refugees may see the German Chancellor as their saviour, but these people do not. To them, she is Mother Teresa. People's traitor, they shout. This is the backlash against Germany's generous refugee policy. These are the dissenters, and their numbers are swelling.
Die Islamisierung.
Islamization, that's the threat, Andreas tells me. I've got nothing against people fleeing war, but everyone is coming here. Germany will take in more than 1 million refugees this year. It's a policy supported by all the major parties.
Warum? Weil es darf keine Opposition geben, keine Alternative. Es darf keine Alternative geben zu den Parteien, die jetzt aktuell da sind. Man kann, wenn es wirklich Neuwahlen kommen sollten, was hat man für eine Alternative? SPD, CDU, Grüne, Linke, die sind alle für dasselbe.
Die Merkel sagt heute, es wird ungehindert weitergehen.
These people may not be the German political mainstream, but this is much more than a fringe group now. These are people who feel that they're not being listened to, and people who now feel in open revolt against their leaders.
How did it all start? The trouble began in 2011 in the Syrian city of Daraa. Locals took to the streets to protest after 15 school children were arrested and reportedly tortured for writing anti-government graffiti on a wall. The protests were peaceful to begin with, calling for the release of the children, democracy and greater freedom for people in the country. The government responded angrily, and on 18 March 2011, the army opened fire on protesters, killing 4 people. The following day, they shot at mourners at the victims' funerals, killing another person. People were shocked and angry at what had happened, and soon the unrest spread to other parts of the country. Many ordinary Syrian people have been caught up in the violence during the war and have been forced to leave their homes to escape to safety in other countries. Every day refugees stream across the borders of Syria into the neighboring nations of Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey and Iraq. More than 4 million people have fled Syria since the start of the conflict, most of them women and children. It is one of the largest refugee movements in recent history. A further 8 million people, 50% of them children, have had to leave their homes within Syria. They are in desperate need of help. But aid agencies say that getting aid to people inside Syria is very difficult and dangerous. The journey they make across land and sea is often very dangerous. Some countries in Europe have said they will accept refugees who want to start a new life here. Germany says they can take up to 500,000 refugees a year. Prime Minister David Cameron says the UK will accept up to 20,000 people direct from Syrian refugee camps by 2020. France has pledged to take in 24,000 people.
Each year, thousands of migrants die attempting to cross international borders without authorization. In 2014, 2/3 of deaths were in the Mediterranean region, the gateway to Europe for those fleeing conflict, persecution and poverty, mainly in Africa and the Middle East. Until 2015, the biggest migratory flow was the central Mediterranean route. Asylum seekers, mostly from Syria or Eritrea, use Libya as a transit point as they head into the EU via Italy and Malta. It's the most dangerous route of all. Hundreds of people die each year crossing the Mediterranean Sea in overloaded fishing boats or rubber dinghies run by people smugglers. The current refugee and migrant crisis has seen an unprecedented flow of people across the eastern Mediterranean route, with the majority coming from Syria. They cross Turkey into the European Union via Greece, southern Bulgaria or Cyprus. They then move north via Macedonia and Serbia to reach western member states. Shifting migratory patterns throughout 2015 have led to growing pressure on the borders of many EU countries. The Western Balkan route in particular has seen a surge in refugee and migrant numbers. There are two main migratory flows: nationals from the region itself, together with refugees and migrants from further afield who are aiming to reach the EU. As border controls are applied ad hoc by various countries, alternative routes lead through Serbia, Croatia and Slovenia, or Serbia and Romania. Many people hope to find shelter in European countries like Austria, Germany, Sweden and the United Kingdom.
Sheer exhaustion. Children and their families spend another day along the muddy border between Serbia and Croatia. Cold, hungry, some without shoes, migrants here are awaiting word on where they'll be allowed to go next. With some Balkan countries closing their borders and others imposing limits on how many people can come in, a backlog is forming.
But of course, with what happened, Hungary closing the border with Croatia, and then some, constraints about numbers, has led to this place becoming more of a bottleneck, as we call it. So, meaning that people are stranded here because it's a limited number of people who are allowed in, and that is something new, and it's to do with the closure of borders elsewhere.
Already having traveled a long journey from Syria or elsewhere in the Middle East, thousands of new migrants are arriving daily, but aren't being allowed to continue to Germany or other EU countries. Frustrations are rising, scuffles break out after waiting for hours in the cold. Some try to keep their sense of humor.
But it's a big problem here, about 6,000 people. It's not your fault, it's our fault. We're bad people.
The EU has agreed to share 120,000 migrants among its members, a small portion of the some 700,000 expected to reach Europe's borders this year.
Progress has been hampered by bad weather and official restrictions. But on Tuesday, the pressure of numbers reached critical mass on the Slovenian-Austrian border. From the refugee camp on the Slovenian side, more than 2,000 men, women and children gave up waiting and came streaming down the hill towards the Austrian frontier.
We told them we want to go, just we want to go. We don't know, we don't want anything, just we want to go, to complete our journey.
Austrian soldiers and police strung a barrier across the road. Translators used megaphones to appeal for calm. The atmosphere was anything but calm. And as the pressure grows, so does the impatience. This group behind me has come walking down the street from the Slovenian side in an unofficial way. They're not registered with the Austrian side, and they're just trying to push their way through. Now, clearly it's not going to succeed, but you can see that the authorities are having great difficulty in maintaining order. The breaking point was the arrival earlier on Tuesday of hundreds more refugees to the Slovenian border camp, already hosting nearly 2,500 people. Until then, the camp had been orderly, with police, charity NGOs and local donations combining to provide food and warm clothes.
These people came to my heart. I empty my closet. I took all the children's stuff because I have a small child, and brought them here to help people because they are wet.
Slovenia, a country of just 2 million people, says it cannot cope as the numbers arriving from Croatia continue to outstrip the numbers being allowed onward to Austria. In direct response, Slovenian police have now reinforced their capability and brought riot vehicles to patrol along the Croatian border. Austria denies restricting numbers, and police at the Šentil crossing say they're processing refugees as quickly as the system allows.
Because we want them to have aid, to have food, and so that they can sleep somewhere in Austria. And there's no limitation about persons that we get from Slovenia, but we need to have a correct order, correct procedure to get them. So this is the problem.
The police don't lack compassion, but it seems the system cannot keep up with the reality.
Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel is in Istanbul looking for help. She's asking the Turkish government to stem the flow of refugees who are coming to Europe.
I think we have used the crisis we are experiencing through a very disorderly and uncontrolled movement of refugees to again achieve closer cooperation on many issues, both between the European Union and Turkey and between Germany and Turkey.
Specifically, the EU wants Turkey to increase Coast Guard patrols and give Syrians work permits. In return, Turkey's being offered more than $3 billion and a revival of EU membership talks. But both are difficult demands for Turkey to fulfill. It has more than 2,500 kilometres of coastline along the Aegean and strong domestic opposition to allowing Syrians to work. So far, there's been no commitment from Turkey on either of these issues.
Unfortunately, Turkey was left alone by the international community in terms of burden sharing. We are very pleased there is a better approach now. The issue of sharing going forward is very important.
Davutoglu also said that if Turks are given visa-free access to the EU, then Turkey will take back failed asylum seekers from Europe. Both leaders did agree that only a resolution to the conflict in Syria would resolve the refugee crisis. Turkey still wants a safe zone in northern Syria, but that seems more unlikely than ever before with Russia's increased involvement in Syria's civil war.
Slovenia is doing its best to do the right thing and welcome the refugees pouring into the country, but it's feeling the strain and has asked the EU for help in dealing with the thousands of cold, wet and hungry people crossing its territory. Soldiers have been mobilised to help the police shepherd the crowds. And unlike the unruly scenes seen elsewhere, the authorities appear to be taking a kid gloves approach. But with few transport resources, lines of people walking through the countryside to reception centres is becoming a common sight.
Just be patient, okay? Slowly.
8,000 more refugees arrived on Monday alone as people rushed to beat the onset of the harsh Balkan winter. And since Friday, nearly 20,000 have set foot on Slovenian soil. More than double the number the country said it could handle just a few days ago. Most say they're on the way to Germany, which now involves a much longer journey since Hungary sealed its border. This has had a knock-on effect in Hungary's neighbours, with thousands waiting to continue their journeys.
We are in a deep trouble. The migration crisis is able to destabilize governments, countries, and the whole European continent. We need a strong, clear-cut answer, timetable, and action plan of EPP. They are victims of bad international political decisions. First of all, what we have been facing is not a refugee crisis. This is a migratory movement composed of economic migrants, refugees, and also foreign fighters. This is an uncontrolled and unregulated process. I would like to remind you that free choice of a host country is not included in the international law. Back these people, their homes, and their countries. But considering them victims must not turn ourselves into being victims. Just because we do not consider them enemies, we must not act against ourselves. Our moral responsibility is to give back these people their homes and their countries. It can't be our objective to provide them with a new European life. Right to human dignity and security are basic rights. But neither the German, Austrian, nor the Hungarian way of life is a basic right of all people on the earth. It is only a right of those ones who have contributed to it. Europe is not able to accept everyone who wants a better life.
What's the status of those wealthier Middle Eastern countries, Natasha, when it comes to their support for Syrian refugees?
Well, it depends on who you ask, Suhana, but most who are following this crisis coming out of Syria say that their wealthier neighbors in and around the Gulf are not doing enough, and some are doing nothing at all. I want to break down some numbers for you in terms of 4 million refugees fleeing out of Syria. What you see here is that neighboring Turkey has taken almost 2 million, Egypt 133,000, even Iraq, which is dealing with its own crisis and problems with ISIS, has taken 250,000. But look at these wealthier states: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Kuwait. 0 refugees taken into those nations, and they're getting considerable criticism in recent days because many are saying that these are some of the wealthiest countries, certainly in Asia, even in the world. High rates of GDP, they have huge levels of infrastructure, very capable militaries. They're able to take in migrant laborers, so why can't they take in migrants as refugees?
كم سوريا لجأ إلى السعودية منذ بدء الثورة قبل نحو 5 أعوام؟ أكثر من نصف مليون سوري دخلوا إلى أراضي المملكة، ولكنهم في لغة الإحصاءات ليسوا مسجلين دوليا كلاجئين، لأن السلطات المحلية منحتهم حق الإقامة والعمل كبقية المقيمين في المملكة. قبل عام 2011 كان في المملكة أقل من 250,000 سوري، واليوم هناك 3/4 مليون يعيشون في السعودية، منهم 200,000 مقيم، وأكثر من 300,000 دخلوا السعودية بتأشيرة مؤقتة ولم يغادروها. السلطات السعودية سمحت لهؤلاء بالبقاء في أراضيها وصحت أوضاعهم. أما العائد من عملية تصحيح الأوضاع فتمثل في التحاق أكثر من 100,000 طالب سوري بالمدارس السعودية وتمتعوا بحق التعليم المجاني، وكذلك تم توفير وظائف وفرص عملية للمقيمين السوريين إلى جانب الرعاية الصحية. وتحت عنوان لم شمل الأسرة دخل 500,000 سوري إلى السعودية بعد أن سمحت السلطات المختصة للمقيم السوري باستخدام أفراد أسرته والعيش معه في السعودية والاستفادة من رعاية اجتماعية أساسية.
The UAE has given safe haven to thousands of Syrians, as well as Palestinians with Syrian documents, who have joined their families, and thousands more have arrived on visitor visas that can be renewed, the official said. They are refugees from their homes, even if they choose not to register formally with the United Nations or other bodies, he said. The UAE has also given more than $537 million in humanitarian aid, the official said. The Mraib Al-Thud refugee camp in Jordan is entirely funded by the UAE, while a field hospital set up in 2012 by the UAE in Jordan treated about 100,000 patients during its first 18 months, with many more since, the official said. Of the registered refugees outside Syria, over half are spread across Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq and Egypt, while 1.9 million are in Turkey and 24,000 in North Africa, according to the UN. We believe that it is in the best long-term interests of the refugees to be close to their homes, so that it will be easier for them to return when this conflict has come to an end, the official said.
Right now we have 2.5 million refugees in our country. We've spent $7.8 billion and received only $417 million from the international community. In the whole of Europe right now, there are 250,000 refugees and migrants.
Turkey has spent almost $8 billion looking after them. It is the largest host of refugees in the world. Many are settled in big cities like Istanbul, woven into the fabric of Turkish society, but others are simply using this country as a transit point to get to Western Europe. So as EU leaders grapple with the migration crisis, trying to persuade them to stay here in Turkey and trying to work out policies with the Turkish government to keep them here in this country is going to be an immense challenge.
Most of the Syrians who left Turkey, they are suffering there. Because life in Europe is not easy as what Syrians think. It's not very nice. And here is not bad.
You're happy to stay?
Yes.
Whenever the Western Unions tells people, or what they told them, that stop coming to Europe, stop immigrating, Syrian people are not going to listen, because most of them are jobless, most of them without families, without really a safer place to stay in, so they will try to survive.
But you're happy to stay here?
But for me, yeah, I'm happy to stay here. I find my, let's say, safety, my relaxation here at Turkey.
Turkey is the key to halting this migration flow, and its government will receive incentives from Brussels to do that. But while so many Syrians still harbour dreams of Europe, it's unclear whether Turkey can really become a more effective policeman for Europe's borders.
Europe's refugee crisis has been inescapable these past few weeks and will undoubtedly remain so for weeks, probably months and years to come. But while Europe's billion-dollar response has been well documented, the money trail at the other end needs more investigating. So that's what we're doing this week, addressing the people smugglers themselves and the extraordinary money they are making from this misery. Consider this number. 366,402 refugees have arrived on Europe's shores, and on average, people smugglers are charging $3,000 a person to help them reach Europe. That means a staggering $1.1 billion has been made in an unofficial market, which sadly has huge demand. And just as a comparison, how much has the UN asked for to assist Syrians? $1.5 billion, and they have a shortfall of $341 million for the rest of the year. Let's get more of an idea about how Europe is going after the source of the smuggling. Joining us from The Hague is Europol's Deputy Director Wiel van Gemert, and we thank you for your time. The numbers that I've got here, and these are Europol numbers I should say, 30,000 people smugglers involved in Europe. That is an extraordinary number. How do you arrive at such a number?
Well, it's a high number. As you probably know, Europol is supporting law enforcement agencies throughout Europe. So the information that we get is coming from law enforcement agencies within the European Union. So 28 member states and even also member states or partners outside of the European Union. 30,000 is the total number that we have in our databases regarding this kind of crime.